543210. Hello and welcome to Globewatch with me, Charles Ebuni Ed from the Hilton Hotel here in Yaoundé, Cameroon. One commission, two major challenges. One, an environmental tsunami codenamed climate change, and the other, a security threat imposed by Boko Haram activities. We are talking about the life of the Lake Chad Basin Commission, wherein about 30 million people depend on the lake to survive. The Commission has recently worked out a policy document of roughly 50 pages to ensure that governments in the region and member countries look carefully at these two elements. My guest today on the program is the Executive Secretary of the Lake Chad Basin Commission. Climate change and insecurity. Is one HIV and AIDS, or are both cancers to be treated at the same level? Ambassador MAMMAN, welcome to Globewatch.
Thank you very much.
You heard my introductory statement, pregnant with medical metaphors, especially in the world of disease.
That's right.
When you look at the climate change situation in the Lake Chad Basin area and the security situation, do you seem to consider one as cancer of the lungs and the other as cancer of the skin, or both are simply cancers?
Yes, both of them are actually cancers. Why? Because one contributed immensely towards the other. Why do I say that? Climate change is largely responsible for the shrinking of Lake Chad. Annually, we lose 74% of the rainfall that falls in the Lake Chad Basin to evapotranspiration. Now, because of that, because of that and other factors, there are, of course, human factors, but the lake has shrunk from its position in the 1960s of 25,000 square kilometers to now about 4,000 square kilometers.
What is actually the situation on the ground? Because if I read a book like that of former US Vice President Al Gore, The Inconvenient Truth,
yes,
which is basically a representation of the Lake Chad area and how the water is shrinking, is quite scary. Is
yes,
it really an environmental scar?
It is not just an environmental scar. Environment has contributed a lot towards the shrinkage, but there are other factors like human factors, extraction, population explosion, and the demand for daily activities of human beings because of the population. But climate is the main culprit, as I said. We had a major drought in 1972 after when the lakes shrank from 25,000 to about 10,800 square kilometers. Then in 1982 we had another bout of drought, and the lake shrank to 1,410 square kilometers. Since then, it has been picking up gradually. Now it is about 4,000 square kilometers.
Oh, well, I understand you perfectly. There are roughly 8 countries involved in the Lake Chad Basin.
There are 6.
6. And there are some countries, about 30 million people depend on to survive through the waters of the lake, fishing and other activities. Just how far are those people affected today?
Yes, they are seriously affected. Now, within a radius of about 30 kilometers from the coast of the lake, we have a population of about 2 million people. Now, these people are the ones that immediately depend on the lake. Now, as the lake shrinks, the population follows. And now, where the lake was before, we have human settlements, we have farmlands, we have pastures. And the population has not been static. In the 1960s, we were about 7 million. Now we are about 45 million in the entire basin. As I said, the immediate vicinity of the lake, we have about 2 million people. Now, these are people who have lost their means of livelihood. Farmers have lost their farmlands. Fishermen don't have water to fish. You know, the lake is divided into two. There is the northern basin, there is the southern basin. Now, the northern basin is just patches of water that you have there. Now, the fishermen there really don't have water to fish. So it has affected the livelihood. And then again, this population that I'm talking about is largely youth under the age of 20. Now you have a population explosion, largely youth with nothing to do. That is a recipe for disaster.
And in the midst of that very young population,
yes,
which do not have access to banks to run their projects, the global policy line is that of protecting the environment to combat climate change. When you come to the end of analysis of agreements like the Paris Climate Change Agreement of 2015, where the Americans have simply pulled out, waiting 2024, total pull out. The Global Fund, the Global Green Fund, have you tried to work out projects to maintain the lives of these people who don't have anything to depend on?
Yes, there have been a number of projects. One was ProDevelop, the program for the development of the Lake Chad Basin, which has been concluded. It was sponsored by the African Development Bank. It was largely targeted at these vulnerable people. Then after ProDevelop, now we have Feasibility, which deals directly with the resilience of the, creating resilience among the people. So, and while that is going on also, the Lake Chad Basin Commission itself has a project for the vulnerable, the women and the young. It is targeted at providing immediate succor, skills, capital, and some other wherewithal for the people to pick up their lives and be able to fend for themselves. So yes,
sure that project of the Secretariat itself, of the Commission itself,
yes,
can really leverage for the affected communities. When you look at your budgetary outline annually, roughly $1 million.
Yes.
Can you deliver?
Yes, well, we deliver as much as we can. Definitely, funding is a challenge.
In funding?
No, as far as PRDEP is concerned, the program of Lake Chad, we fund from the resources of the Commission. But as I said, Africa Development Bank is the one largely funding, which funded ProDevelop and is now funding Feasibility. And we have World Bank interventions also. We have Global Environmental Fund that is also chipping in. We have, the French also have a program going on in the basin.
If we were dealing with the forest, like the Congo Basin, and we are losing trees, we'll be talking of reforestation or afforestation, whatever, whether you are using British or American English. But now we are talking about the desert, which is encroaching, and we are losing water. And one moment there was talk of the Obangi project to pump in water into the Lake Chad Basin area to stabilize the water. Where is that project today?
The project is still there. As you probably are aware, there was a pre-feasibility study carried out by a Canadian firm, CIMA International, which concluded that it is technically possible to transfer water from the Ubangi River in the Congo Basin to the Lake Chad Basin. But then it is an engineering challenge. So now we are carrying out a second phase of feasibility study in order to find out more about the environmental and social and economic impacts of that project.
If I may come in, why was that project not given to Israelis in particular? Because Israel is entirely a desert country which even exports water. I have been in Israeli water catchment centers in Tel Aviv, in northern Israel, Jerusalem. Why didn't you give them? Because possibly they have the best technology in that you give to Canada, for example. I just wonder.
No, what the Canadian company did was a pre-feasibility study.
Okay.
The contract has not been given to anybody yet.
Okay.
So we are at the stage of feasibility study. We want to find out as much information as we can about the viability of the project, about the impact on the environment, on the people. These are the studies that have to be carried out. We have funding support, $1.8 million from the Chinese government through Power China to carry out part of the feasibility study. The Italian government also pledged a sum of 1.5 million euro, all for the feasibility study. We'll have to do that first, then do the engineering drawings, then we talk about who we are going to give the contract to.
Well, you are not just the Executive Secretary of the Lake Chad Basin Commission, but you are equally head of mission for the National Joint Task Force against Boko Haram. And let me just switch to another cancer of the Lake Chad Basin area, which is insecurity. Roughly 3 million people have been displaced because of terrorism in this part of Africa.
That's right.
And just in 2014 alone, 6,000 people died because of Boko Haram. Mm-hmm. How much of a headache is it to you personally in running the structure?
Yes, it is a huge headache. And let me take you back to your first question, whether there are two cancers, and I said it's one and the same cancer. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I said it's one and the same cancer is that at the time Boko Haram ideology came, it met an army of disgruntled youth, as I described to you. And that facilitated the entry of Boko Haram ideology into the area. Here we have an army of restive youth who have nothing to do, and here are the Boko Haram elements who come to tell them that if you adhere to our ideology, your life is going to change, we are going to give you this and that, and they believed it, you know. So it is a problem. We are into several operations. As you are aware, Boko Haram has been degraded. If you compare where they were in 2015 to where we are today, you will agree with me that a lot of work has been done. Boko Haram has been degraded. But that does not mean that they are not there.
Sir, just some 30 seconds. Lai Mohammed, President Buhari's information minister,
yes,
said on this program in 2016
yes,
that Boko Haram in 2017.
Yes.
Sorry, that Boko Haram has been defeated in Nigeria, and the justification he gave is that before the administration came to office, there were swaths of lands in Nigeria which were under Boko Haram control, and today they don't control even a single % of Nigerian territory.
Yes.
At the commission level with other members, is that the same view you share?
Yes, that is what I'm trying to say. If you compare the situation in 2015 to where we are today, you will agree with me that a lot of work has been done. Boko Haram has been pushed to a few areas. But then, as I was trying to explain, they are still there. That does not mean that they have disappeared. They still have the capacity to attack, especially soft targets in search of food and other supplies. So they are there. As you are aware, terrorism is a hydra-headed problem. As you think you have cleared it, then it will rear its head at another location. That is what we are contending with now.
You just said that several operations have been carried out to root out terrorism in this area, and I remember that the National Joint Task Force against Boko Haram is roughly 8,700 personnel, military, civilian combined, including paramilitary forces. You are moving from one country to another of the Lake Chad Basin Commission member countries to explain to them the new stabilization strategy to combat insecurity in particular. What is the content of that document?
The document is comprises 9 pillars and 40 strategic objectives touching on every aspect of humanitarian assistance and which is supposed to gradually transition into development. There are pillars there dealing with governance, pillars dealing with security, pillars dealing with humanitarian assistance, pillars dealing with disarmament, demobilization, pillars dealing with learning, education, and skills acquisition, pillars dealing with empowerment of women and youth. And these pillars are divided, broken down into strategic objectives, about 40 of them. So if you read it, it is quite a comprehensive document.
Well, you just described that it is quite a comprehensive document. Yes. I have not had access to it, but I just wonder when I read at the economics of insecurity in the region.
Yes.
One of the foiling factors of terrorism is that around the Lake Chad in particular, Boko Haram militants and surrogates, they tax each fisherman after a catch $13. That should be roughly 6,000 francs CFA. How do you work out such elements? Did you take into consideration in the elaboration of that document the economics of Boko Haram?
Yes, definitely, definitely. They tax the people, but that definitely cannot be the main source of the main source of income for Boko Haram. Definitely, with the amount of resources available to them, you will agree with me that they have sources of income coming from elsewhere. The tax you are talking about is a means of controlling the population. Yes. So the economics of Boko Haram, definitely it has to be taken into consideration.
What is the lifespan of that document?
No, in the drafting of the document, in the first place, all the affected members of the Lake Chad Basin Commission were invited, their partners. They took very active part. Experts came in and took very active part in the production of the document. Then, of course, we had the support of the African Union and UNDP in the production of the document. So it is quite a very comprehensive document, as I said, well thought out, applauded by the international community. It has a lifespan of 5 years with effect from 30th August 2018, when it was approved and validated by the Council of Ministers of the Lake Chad Basin Commission in Abuja. Now, part of that, the first year of those 5 years is supposed to be the inception phase of the strategy, when we are supposed to set up the structures that will help implement the strategy. And that is where we are now.
What will it take for it to be implemented? I saw you, for example, during your meetings with Cameroonian authorities. You met not only the executive, you met equally the legislative, and I'm sure that it will be the same scenario in Nigeria, in Chad, Central African Republic, if you care. Will it need parliamentary approval?
Yes, you definitely. We are in our countries are in democracies. A lot of things you cannot do them without parliamentary approval. For example, budgeting. Budgeting needs parliamentary approval, and the members of parliament, remember, are the representatives of the people. They are the ones who have direct access to the people. So if we are able to convince the members of parliament, they will in turn convey that message to the people.
And that does not scare you that it will be a delayed process whose time frame may simply not be respected?
No, but we are not sitting down and waiting for the parliament to legislate. The parliament is going to play the role of advocacy, first of all, and all our member countries, before they take certain decisions, they have to present it to the parliament. Remember, we are talking about the national buy-in. Now, they are supposed to be territorial action plan is supposed to be produced by the governors of the affected regions.
What does that mean, the territorial plans?
Now, as I said earlier, the strategy is divided into 9 pillars. Now, how do we activate the 9 pillars? How do we implement them? So each of the 8 affected regions, there are 2 in Cameroon, north and far north. There are 3 in Nigeria. There are 2 in Chad, and 1 region, Diffa region in Niger. So each of the governors is supposed to look at these 9 pillars and come up with an implementation plan. Now that implementation plan is supposed to include costing. Once it is costed, we will now look at funding.
Did you try to work an estimate of the cost?
Yeah, the estimate is roughly about $12 billion. That is what we are talking about. But as you said, it's a rough indicative budget. We will have the more comprehensive budget after the territorial action plans have been produced by the governors and costed. So the aggregate of that costing will now give us an idea of what the cost is going to be.
When you look at the Sahel counter-terrorism strategy, you look at the one produced by the Lake Chad Basin Commission. For example, are you on the same path of thought?
Yes, we are on the same path. Lake Chad area and the Sahel are overlapping areas geographically. So we are talking about one and the same thing. There are linkages, of course, between Boko Haram and what is happening in the Sahel area. I was at the meeting in Ouagadougou of ECOWAS, an enlarged ECOWAS meeting to include members of the Lake Chad Basin Commission who are not members of ECOWAS, where pledges
Cameroon, for example?
Yes, Cameroon was there, Chad was there, where pledges were made to raise funds for counterterrorism activities. So yes, we are on board, we are part of the plan, we were there.
Certainly there will be a lot of political will needed for all of this to function. When you look at the philosophies of the Biyas, the Debis, the Yusufas, the Muhammadu Buharis, with all other geopolitical considerations, are you scared in any form that the strategy will be delayed?
No, not at all, not at all. We have the full support of our political leadership. And that again explains why we need to talk to the members of parliament. They are part of the political leadership. All the presidents that you have mentioned are on board. They are with us on this. Their buy-in is not in doubt in any way. You remember I met the Prime Minister here in Niger. I met the President Yusuf and submitted a copy to him. So the buy-in, we have not yet been to Nigeria.
How voluminous is that document?
Well, it's about 50 pages. So it's not very voluminous. And there is an abridged version of it for executives like you who don't have a lot of time to read the whole thing.
Not an executive. Go ahead, Your Excellency.
Yes, so we are not really scared about the political buy-in. And they have been advocating for it outside the shores of, outside the areas of the Lake Chad Basin.
Let me bring back the debates from where I started, the environmental challenges of the Lake Chad Basin Commission.
Yes.
When you look at the countries involved in this waterway or lakeside, which is the most affected country?
Well, the most affected countries are, of course, those closer to the desert. Because in addition to evaporation, there is also desert encroachment.
That this is the most affected. Chad,
I would say Chad and Niger. I would say Chad and Niger. Then
how severe is that on the Chadians, for example?
Or the shrinking of the lake actually has not been very drastic on the Chadian side. There is water there. It's on the Niger side and the Nigerian side that water has virtually disappeared. We have patches of let's say ponds, let's call them ponds. That is what exists in those countries. The water has now receded to the side of Chad and Cameroon. That's why you still have water. So the effect is more dramatic in Niger and Nigeria than in Chad and Cameroon.
There are some people who consider the structure you are heading as a lame duck one, which has been functioning over the years, and that the governance of the institution do not even have faith in it. If your mandate was to end today, what will you consider the most transformatory push or element that you brought in to give it a new impetus?
No, what I brought in, I would say, is the attempt to address the challenges caused by Boko Haram, because at the time I came in about 1.5 years ago, that was the biggest challenge that we have, security challenges. There is no way you can achieve anything without security. There can be no development without security, and no security without development. So the securing of the area is one of the achievements that that I can say we have achieved. And during my time, the Water Charter of the Lake Chad Basin, we had the membership of the fourth country that we needed to activate the charter. Nigeria signed, and the charter is now about to be activated. What we are waiting for is for the instruments to be deposited with the host country, that is Chad, for the water charter, which governs the use of the waters of Lake Chad and other transboundary waters, for in a sustainable way.
Security and environment. When you look at their tomorrow, how do you see the future?
The future is bright if we are able to recharge the lake, which we are committed to. We will be able to bring a lot of succor to the people, and life will definitely change. We will be able to return farmers to their farmlands. We will be able to allow the fishermen to be fishermen again.
The Executive Secretary of the Lake Chad Basin Commission, Ambassador MAMMAN, thank you very much indeed for being guest on Globewatch.
Thank you. I appreciate your invitation.